When Evelyn Carter, an elderly black woman, steps into an exclusive luxury store, she expects a peaceful shopping experience. Instead, she is humiliated by a rude sales associate who assumes she can't afford the high-end items. The young employee, Madison Hayes, mocks and dismisses her, refusing to serve her with respect. However, the situation takes an unexpected turn when Evelyn calmly reveals a shocking truth. She owns the entire company. As Madison realizes her mistake, Evelyn is faced with a choice: fire the employee or teach her a lesson about true success and respect. The grand luxury boutique radiated elegance, its crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the polished marble floors. Designer handbags sat delicately on glass shelves, each one a symbol of status and wealth. The scent of fine leather mingled with the faint aroma of fresh roses, creating an atmosphere of exclusivity. Soft, classical music played in the background as well-dressed customers sipped complimentary champagne, each one attended by eager sales associates trained to cater only to the elite. Amid the quiet hum of conversation and the clicking of expensive heels, an elderly black woman stepped inside. She carried herself with quiet dignity, dressed in a simple yet refined ensemble. Her posture was straight, her gaze thoughtful as she browsed the collection. There was no hesitation when she reached for a sleek designer handbag, one that sat behind a velvet rope reserved for those with the means to afford it. Just as her fingers brushed against the soft leather, a sharp voice broke the serene atmosphere. "That's not for you." The sales associate stepped in front of her, lips curling, into a smirk, eyes full of condescension. "What happens when you judge the wrong person? You won't believe how this one ends. Have you ever been judged unfairly? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. The boutique was a sanctuary of exclusivity, a place where wealth was more than a privilege. It was a prerequisite. The moment customers stepped inside, they were greeted by soft, classical music, the delicate clinking of crystal champagne flutes, and the intoxicating scent of expensive perfume mingling with polished mahogany. The air itself felt expensive, reserved for those who understood the unspoken rules of luxury. Madison Hayes had mastered these rules. She wasn't just a sales associate. In her mind, she was a gatekeeper of status, deciding who deserved access to high fashion and who didn't belong. At just 26, she had developed a keen sense for spotting real customers from mere pretenders. She catered to those who arrived in chauffeur-driven cars, draped in designer labels, flashing black credit cards as casually as they breathed. Anyone else? Not worth her time. As Madison scrolled through her phone behind the counter, the grand glass doors opened and Evelyn Carter stepped inside. The elderly woman moved with a quiet, unassuming grace, her presence understated yet commanding. She wasn't draped in diamonds or the latest couture, but her elegance was effortless, something money couldn't buy. Her navy blue tailored coat, paired with pearl earrings and polished low-heeled shoes, spoke of refined taste rather than extravagance. She didn't need to announce her wealth, she simply carried it in her demeanor. And yet, no one greeted her. No polite welcome, no champagne offered, no eager associate rushing to assist. She was invisible. Evelyn took her time, her fingers grazing the rich fabrics of designer gowns, admiring the craftsmanship of each item like an art collector examining a masterpiece. She had built her luxury fashion empire from the ground up, dedicating decades to creating timeless, elegant designs. But today, she wasn't here as a business mogul. She was just a woman appreciating beautiful things, until she reached for a sleek black designer handbag. In an instant, Madison was in front of her. The young associate who had ignored Evelyn moments ago now blocked her path, a forced smile plastered on her face. Her manicured nails tapped against the glass display as she tilted her head in fake politeness. "That's not for you, ma'am," Madison said, her voice sugary yet sharp. "Maybe I can show you something more affordable?" The energy in the room shifted. Nearby customers, sipping their champagne, paused to watch. A few exchanged glances, amused whispers passing between them. Evelyn lifted her gaze, meeting Madison's eyes with a calm, unreadable expression. "And how do you know what I can afford?" she asked, her voice measured, carrying a quiet authority. Madison let out a small, amused scoff. She had encountered plenty of dreamers, people who wandered into the boutique just to fantasize about a lifestyle they could never attain. She had perfected the art of dismissing them quickly, ensuring they didn't waste her time or lower the store's prestige. "Let's just say I have a good eye for these things," Madison replied smoothly, her smirk widening. Evelyn said nothing, her fingers still resting lightly on the handbag's fine leather. Mistaking the silence for hesitation, Madison decided to deliver the final blow. With a dismissive wave of her hand, she gestured toward the back of the store. "We have a lovely clearance section over there," she said with a knowing smile. "If you're looking for something more reasonable." The words sliced through the air like a dagger. A few customers stifled chuckles, entertained by the unfolding scene. One woman, wearing a diamond bracelet that caught the light, whispered something to her friend, who smirked in response. Evelyn exhaled, her fingers tapping gently against the bag. Not out of hesitation, not out of nervousness, but something else entirely. Then, ever so slightly, she smiled. A flicker of something, doubt, unease, flashed across Madison's face, but she ignored it. She had no idea that she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. Madison stood firm in front of Evelyn, her polished heels clicking against the marble floor as she subtly shifted her weight. Her arms folded neatly over her chest, her smirk widening as if she enjoyed this moment of power. She had done this before, turning away unworthy customers, ensuring that the boutique maintained its exclusive reputation. She tilted her head slightly, her tone coated in false sweetness. "That's a little out of your budget, don't you think?" Evelyn remained composed, unfazed by the disrespect in Madison's voice. She had encountered people like this before. People who equated worth with outward appearances, who had no idea that true power didn't need to be flaunted. She simply arched an eyebrow and met Madison's gaze with quiet authority. "And how do you know what I can afford?" A soft hush fell over the boutique. Customers within earshot glanced up from their shopping, sensing that something interesting was unfolding. A few of them exchanged looks, already forming their own judgments. Madison let out a mocking laugh, the sound ringing through the store like a bell announcing Evelyn's supposed foolishness. She made sure everyone could hear. "People like you don't shop here. We don't do charity." A few customers chuckled under their breath, smirking in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably, sensing that the situation was quickly escalating into something more than just a casual interaction. Evelyn exhaled slowly, her fingers still resting lightly on the sleek leather of the handbag. Her expression remained unreadable, but there was an unmistakable air of confidence in her posture, a silent power that Madison was too blind to recognize. Evelyn spoke softly, but her words carried weight. "Be careful how you treat people, young lady." Her tone wasn't angry or aggressive. It was a warning, the kind that came from someone who knew more than they were letting on. But Madison, too caught up in her arrogance, didn't recognize it for what it was. Instead, she rolled her eyes, exhaling dramatically. "Oh, please. You should be thanking me for saving you from embarrassment." The tension in the store thickened. A few customers stopped pretending to browse and openly watched the exchange, intrigued. Even some of the other employees had noticed, though none dared to intervene. Not yet. For a moment, Madison thought she had won. She expected the elderly woman to turn away, flustered, ashamed, maybe even apologetic. But instead, Evelyn smiled. It wasn't a forced, awkward smile. It was knowing, calm. A smile that held secrets, and for the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed Madison's face. Something about the way Evelyn looked at her. As if she knew something Madison didn't. Sent an unsettling feeling crawling up her spine. "Is that so?" Evelyn said, smoothly, her voice laced with something Madison couldn't quite place. Madison's smirk faltered just for a second, but she pushed the feeling aside. She had no idea that she had just insulted the most powerful woman in the room. The moment stretched between them, heavy with tension. Madison still held her smirk, but there was a crack in her confidence, a slight hesitancy in her stance that hadn't been there before. Evelyn's composed smile remained, her fingers still lightly resting on the leather handbag as if she had all the time in the world. Then, with the same effortless grace she had carried since walking in, Evelyn reached into her handbag and pulled out a sleek black credit card. Not just any card. The kind with no limit. The kind that only the wealthiest, most powerful people in the world possessed. The kind that shut people like Madison up in an instant. A ripple of murmurs spread through the boutique. The customers, who had been merely entertained before, were now genuinely intrigued. Madison's smirk faltered, her eyes flicking between the card and Evelyn's calm expression. For the first time, uncertainty crept into her face. "Would you like to process my purchase?" Evelyn asked smoothly, tilting her head slightly. Her voice held no malice, no anger, just quiet authority. Madison blinked rapidly, her brain struggling to catch up. This wasn't possible. This woman, this old lady in her plain navy coat and simple pearl earrings, had a card that Madison had only ever seen in the hands of royalty and billionaires. Madison swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. Where did you get that?" Evelyn's smile didn't waver. She didn't rush, didn't raise her voice. Instead, she took a slow step forward, looking Madison directly in the eye. "Look up the owner of this company." Madison's heart skipped a beat. The murmuring grew louder as customers pulled out their phones, some recording, some Googling names, whispers filling the air like static electricity. The store employees, who had been silent observers, suddenly looked at one another, sensing something was very, very wrong. The store manager, a tall man in his 50s with neatly combed hair, came rushing over, his face red with panic. Unlike Madison, he had paid attention in company training. "Miss Carter," he gasped, breathless. I didn't realize." His entire demeanor shifted in an instant. The arrogance that had been in Madison's tone vanished from his own. He was suddenly deferential, respectful, and absolutely terrified. Madison's stomach dropped. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned toward the store's checkout system, hastily typing in the name Evelyn Carter. And then, the world around her shattered. Because there it was, Evelyn Carter, CEO, founder, owner. The woman she had mocked, dismissed, and humiliated was not just some wealthy customer. She was the reason this boutique even existed. Gasps echoed through the boutique as more customers connected the dots. Some covered their mouths in shock, others whispered excitedly, pointing toward Evelyn like she was a living legend. Madison felt the blood drain from her face. This couldn't be happening. She looked back at Evelyn, her breath coming out in short, panicked bursts. I didn't know," she stammered, her voice high-pitched and desperate. "Miss Carter, I swear, I had no idea who you were." Evelyn finally lifted the handbag Madison had tried to keep from her. She inspected it thoughtfully, then looked back at the young woman. "And yet, you assumed," she said, her voice cool and controlled. Madison's stomach twisted. There was no way out of this. Evelyn turned to the store manager, her eyes never leaving Madison's panicked face. "Tell me," she said calmly, gesturing toward Madison. "Is this how we train our employees?" The store manager visibly paled. He knew that whatever happened next, Madison was done. Madison could barely process what was happening. One moment, she had been the one in control, standing over an unassuming old woman she had dismissed without a second thought. The next, she was standing before Evelyn Carter, the owner of the very company she worked for, the woman who could end her career with a single word. The weight of her mistake hit her all at once. The murmurs from customers, the stunned expressions of her co-workers, the wide-eyed fear in the store manager's face, it was all crushing her. Her hands trembled slightly as she grasped onto the counter for support, her mind racing to find a way to undo what she had just done. Her mouth was dry, but she forced herself to speak. "Miss Carter, I was just following store policy," she blurted out, her voice shaky. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just—" Evelyn tilted her head slightly, her expression still calm, still unreadable. "No," she said softly, but her voice carried through the boutique like a command. "You weren't following store policy." The boutique fell into complete silence. Madison's stomach twisted as she saw the disappointed shake of Evelyn's head. "You were following your own prejudice," Evelyn continued, her tone not cruel but firm. "You saw me, and you made an assumption, and based on that assumption, you decided I wasn't worth your time, that I wasn't worth treating with basic human decency." Madison felt a lump in her throat. She had never been called out like this before. She had always felt secure in the way she judged people, as if she had a sixth sense for who belonged and who didn't. But now she realized how blind she had truly been. The store manager, who had been standing awkwardly nearby, finally stepped forward, clearing his throat. He looked absolutely mortified, beads of sweat visible on his forehead. "Miss Carter," he said quickly, his voice full of forced politeness, "I assure you, we do not tolerate this kind of behavior in our store. We take full responsibility. If you'd like, we will fire her immediately." The words sent a fresh wave of panic through Madison. She felt like the floor had just collapsed beneath her. Fired. If she got fired for disrespecting the company's CEO, she knew exactly what would happen. She wouldn't just lose her job. She would lose everything. Madison had spent years working her way up to get a position in a boutique like this. She had fought to make a name for herself in the industry, pushing through long hours, low pay, and fierce competition. If she was fired for insulting Evelyn Carter, there wouldn't be a single luxury store in the city that would take her. She'd be blacklisted. The panic clawed at her chest as she turned back to Evelyn, her voice desperate. "Please," she whispered, all arrogance gone. I didn't mean to." Evelyn lifted a hand, stopping her. Madison flinched slightly, expecting the worst. But then Evelyn spoke. Firing her would be too easy. Madison's head snapped up, blinking in confusion. The store manager hesitated. "Ms. Carter?" Evelyn didn't look at him. Her eyes remained fixed on Madison, studying her carefully. "I built this company from nothing," she said, her voice measured, deliberate. "I know exactly what it's like to be underestimated." Madison swallowed hard. There was something about the way she said it, something that made Madison feel ashamed. She had assumed Evelyn was beneath her, but in reality, she was standing in front of a woman who had fought harder than Madison ever had to get where she was. Evelyn let the silence stretch before she continued. "You think your job here is about selling expensive things to rich people," she said. "But that's not what makes this brand successful. It's about elevating people. It's about respect." Madison felt her stomach churn. She had never thought about it like that. Evelyn sighed, then took a step forward. "So," she said, her tone turning almost gentle, "I'm giving you a choice." Madison held her breath. "You can leave," Evelyn said simply, "or you can spend the next 6 months working under my mentorship." The words knocked the air from Madison's lungs. She expected to be fired, humiliated, thrown out. Instead, Evelyn Carter, the woman she had just insulted, was giving her a chance. Madison stared at her, unable to speak. Evelyn folded her hands, neatly in front of her. "Learn what it really means to be part of this company," she continued. "Learn how to lead with grace, not arrogance." Madison's mind raced. She had never been given a real opportunity before. She had fought for everything she had. But had she ever really deserved it? She had always assumed that powerful people were ruthless, that someone like Evelyn Carter would destroy her career for a mistake like this. But instead, she was offering her something completely unexpected, a second chance. Madison hesitated, her pride screaming at her to say no, to walk away, find another boutique that would hire her, pretend this never happened. But she knew the truth. No one else would ever give her this opportunity again. She took a deep, shaky breath. Then, slowly, she nodded. She swallowed, hard, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll take the job." A murmur spread through the store. Evelyn watched her carefully. Then, finally, she gave a small nod of approval. "Then let's see if you can prove yourself." Madison, for the first time that day, stood without arrogance, only humility. And as Evelyn Carter turned away, Madison realized this was the most important lesson she had ever learned. Months had passed since the day Madison made the biggest mistake of her career. Since then, everything had changed. The arrogant, dismissive sales associate who once stood at the boutique's front counter no longer existed. In her place was someone new, someone who had spent the last few months relearning everything she thought she knew. Now, instead of standing behind the cash register, Madison found herself in an entirely different setting, the headquarters of Evelyn Carter's fashion empire. She had been given a position as an entry-level assistant, a role she had never imagined for herself. Here, she wasn't just selling luxury items. She was learning the industry from the ground up. She had sat in on design meetings, watched as fabrics were chosen for the next season's collection, listened as buyers and executives discussed business decisions she never even knew existed. For the first time, she understood the real work that went into the luxury world. And for the first time, she understood why Evelyn had given her a second chance. It hadn't been out of kindness alone. It had been a test to see whether Madison could grow beyond the small, limited view of success she once had. And now, standing outside Evelyn Carter's office, clutching a small folder of notes from a meeting she had just attended, Madison knew it was time. She had spent months observing, learning, and reflecting. Now, she needed to do one more thing. She needed to apologize. For real this time. Taking a deep breath, Madison knocked lightly on the large wooden door before stepping inside. Evelyn was sitting at her desk, reviewing sketches from the upcoming collection. She didn't even look up. "You're here late," Evelyn remarked, flipping through a page. "Most of the assistants left an hour ago." Madison swallowed, stepping forward. I wanted to speak with you," she admitted, feeling a nervous twist in her stomach. Evelyn finally lifted her eyes, raising an eyebrow. "Go on." Madison took another deep breath. She hesitated, gathering her words. "I judged you unfairly. I was wrong." Evelyn didn't respond right away. She simply watched her carefully, as if waiting to see if there was more to be said. And there was. Madison sighed, gripping the folder in her hands. "For so long, I thought success was just about looking the part," she admitted. "I thought wealth meant you deserved respect, and that anyone who didn't look like they belonged didn't." She met Evelyn's gaze. "But I was wrong. I let my arrogance get in the way, and I treated you horribly. I wasn't just following some unspoken rule. I was being ignorant." Silence filled the room for a moment. Then Evelyn's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "That's growth," she said simply. Madison let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She had expected Evelyn to say more, to remind her of the embarrassment she had caused, the mistakes she had made. But Evelyn didn't need to, because Madison already understood. As she was about to leave, Evelyn reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. She set it gently on the desk in front of Madison and gestured for her to take it. Madison's brows furrowed in confusion as she hesitantly reached forward, opening the box. Inside, instead of jewelry or an expensive trinket, sat something simple but powerful. A business card. Her own name was printed neatly across it. She looked up at Evelyn, her expression full of unspoken questions. Evelyn smiled. "Learn from this," she said, "and maybe one day you'll build something of your own." Madison felt her throat tighten. For months, she had worked tirelessly to earn Evelyn's trust, to prove that she was more than her mistakes. But she had never expected this. Evelyn was offering her a future. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away, standing up straighter. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice full of sincerity. Evelyn gave a small nod, then returned to her work as if the conversation had never happened. Madison clutched the business card tightly in her hands, taking one last look before she turned to leave. She had walked into this company as someone who thought she knew everything. Now, she was walking out as someone who understood what it truly meant to succeed. and for the first time, she felt like she had a real future. As Madison stepped out of Evelyn Carter's office, the small business card still clutched in her hands, she took a deep breath. The weight of the past few months settled over her, but for the first time, it didn't feel heavy. Instead, it felt like a lesson she was finally ready to carry forward. She had walked into this company thinking she knew everything about success, that wealth meant power, and power meant treating people according to what they could afford. But now, she knew better. Evelyn Carter had taught her that true success had nothing to do with money, that respect wasn't something you demanded. It was something you earned. As she glanced down at the business card in her hands, she understood something else, too. This wasn't just a second chance. It was an opportunity to become someone better. And she wasn't going to waste it, because in the end, true wealth isn't about money. It's about respect. And that you can't buy. Have you ever misjudged someone based on how they looked? What did you learn from it? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story that will change the way you see the world. We'll see you in the next one.